How's everyone doing today? Welcome back to On The Ball. Welcome back to another episode of Review the Prem. The scores on the doors at this moment in time is 208 to Sim, 216 to me. The way the scoring works is 5 points for a completely correct scoreline, 1 point for a correct result. And the star man, once you pick that man, you cannot pick him again for the rest of the season. 5 points for a goal, 2 points for an assist. And let's get into the weekend's action. Big weekend of Premier League action. And starting off with a 7-0 drubbing of Brighton at the hands of Nottingham Forest. Back to winning ways after losing, what was it, 5-0 last week to Bournemouth. They responded in the most perfect manner that you can respond. Still went for 2-0, I went 2-1. Both get a point on the board for this one. It was basically a lesson on how to counter-attacking at his best, wasn't it, from Nottingham Forest? I think they had 37% possession in the game and end up scoring 7 goals.
Yeah, crazy. And Chris Wood, I think, with a hat-trick, unbelievably, he's on, 17 Premier League goals now this season. What a season he is having. Apparently, Chris Wood now, after this game, has the highest ever conversion rate in Premier League history, 38%, I think, conversion rate.
You know, with Chris Wood as well, he was the most transferred out player in FPL this week.
Oh, man. A lot of unhappy FPL managers. But it's crazy. I think also that's also evident as well, as much as, look, I don't want to take anything away from Chris Wood, but I think that stat also probably shows he's probably having a bit of an outlier season in terms of, like, he's never been this clinical in his career. I know he's 33 now. And last season, to be fair, he got 14 goals, I think, in the Premier League.
I think it goes without saying though, when you're at 33 and you're banging in the goals like this.
Yeah, I think he's just having he's having one of these. You know, sometimes players just have these one-off unbelievable seasons, and I think he's probably in the midst of one. But credit to him, because no one saw it coming, and he's every single week. But Elanga got 3 assists as well. He's on unbelievable form. Mad to think that I think they beat Villa 2-1. I can't remember how long. I think maybe a month ago, and at that game, Elanga scored, and that was his first goal of the season. That was only a month ago, and since then he's just been on mad form, and he's really gone from strength to strength. But what a display from from Nottingham Forest to completely dismantle what Brighton were trying to do. Brighton just basically had absolutely no answer to the absolute devastating clinical counters that Forest had, and Forest were just absolutely incredible. And I think maybe the result, obviously, it was a battering, but I think late in the game as well, Brighton seemed to give up, and they were just giving away easy goals near the end, and especially that last one to Jota Silva. I think the keeper just gave it straight to him, and they had lost their way, completely collapsed near the end, which probably added to that scoreline. But it was already an unbelievable battering, and I think Brighton were guilty of being, I guess, being a bit naive, or, completely opening up in this game. If you look at how they set up, it was just so open, and Forest ruthlessly exploited it. And look, you have to be a very good team to exploit it as well as Forest did, and that's exactly what they did. And they're showing no signs of letting up in this kind of top 4 race. They're now 6 points clear of Man City, which is unbelievable to think about with 14 games to go. So incredible stuff from Nottingham Forest. And Morgan Gibbs-White as well had an unbelievable game. They did all of them, and they kept the clean sheet. It was just a remarkable performance to beat a good Brighton team. Whatever you want to say about Brighton, they are a decent team, and to beat them 7-0 is no mean feat.
Yeah, I'd be really upset if I was Fabian Hertzler. Hasn't gone all well for him this season. A lot of patches of bad form, long patches of it as well. And to lose 7-0, no matter who you lose to, is nowhere near good enough. And I think the latter stages of that game would massively concern me if I'm Hertzler and I'm the Brighton fans, because it was clear evidence of just giving up on a pitch. And that's, even if you're 3-4-0 down, you still need to be playing for personal pride, right? And they just gave up all of that. Yeah. And that's got to be a massive cause for concern. Young manager, maybe a naive manager, I don't know. He started off really well, but I don't know. Nothing. It doesn't seem to be all well over there with Brighton. But back to your point on Morgan Gibbs-White, he's the one that's pulling the strings for them at the moment. He is such an incredible player, and I think he's literally the hub of that team, Morgan Gibbs-White. And I think slowly at the start of the season, he was creeping into the season. Now he is literally just in the centre and the thick of all the action for them. And on your point on Elanga before that as well, Manchester United must be looking at it being like, how did we let this guy go? Because they've let Rashford go now. They've let Anthony go now. They've got a clear lack of strikers. They didn't get Matisse Tell over the line on deadline day. and they're seeing Elanga doing what he's doing in the Premier League week in, week out.
Yeah, and he would be, I think, perfect for that kind of United system at the moment as well, like where Ahmad plays. I know Ahmad's doing well as well, but Elanga would be fantastic in that system, I think, and they must be kicking themselves because he's on an incredible run of form. They've just like, I don't know what's like when it comes to Forest. I know everyone's marvelling about them this season, but it's mad to think about, like, a year ago, you know, they almost lost Gibbs White because of PSR issues. A lot of these players were up for sale, and also they got, you know, they sold Brennan and they reinvested it. And it's again, it's like another lesson in maybe not always hanging on to your best players or some of your good players. If you can get good deals and reinvest it, look what Forest have done with that, and they've done an unbelievable job.
So the two players they bought with the money was Hudson-Odoi and Elanga, wasn't it?
Unbelievable.
It's brilliant business right now. It really does. But let's move on. Let's go to the Vitality. Bournemouth 0, Liverpool 2. Big win for Liverpool in terms of the title race. I went for 3-2 to Liverpool, so I get a point. Sim went for 2-2. I don't think this scoreline tells the whole story of the game. I think Bournemouth actually played really well and were unlucky not to take something from the game. Liverpool go 1-0 up with a penalty, a very dubious one of it as well. I don't think it was a penalty. I mean, it looks like he just clipped his own legs pretty much and went down.
I think when you slow it down, there is contact from the Bournemouth player, but you have to really look for it. But I think you can see it if you really slow it down. But obviously, in real time, I'm just a bit surprised the referee did see it, because it was like minimal touching. I think there's probably not enough of VAR to overturn it. I think there is contact, and I did think the Bournemouth player did clip his leg, so I think there is enough to keep it as a penalty. But I think Liverpool can maybe count. I think they can count themselves lucky in the sense that I don't know how the referee saw it. And in that sense, if the referee doesn't give it, I don't think VAR gives it. So I think on that sense, they're a bit lucky. But on another sense, I think they would argue there probably was a penalty because he does get clipped. So I think probably the right decision was just about made to. But yeah, Bournemouth, we all know how tough a place it is to go, especially this season. And I think especially that miss from Cliver, the open goal, they'll be kicking themselves at that moment, because I think the momentum was with them then. And obviously Alisson had to make a lot of saves, Semenyo, and even with their two strikers out, still causing Liverpool so many problems, but just weren't able to get that goal to get themselves back in the game. And that'll be massively frustrating. And then Salah with an unbelievable finish to kill the game. And it's kind of these kind of performances and these kind of games is what champions are made of, I think, a lot of the time. When you're under the cosh, you're away at a tough team, and you go there and just get the job done. You get the 3 points and you move on. And that was a massive result. Don't get it twisted for Liverpool, because with the game in hand coming up against Everton, they needed to win this, so that if they can win that game in hand, it could be 9 points. And it was a massive win, especially when you look at the title. So very, very big. I wouldn't say impressive performance, but they did get the job done. And going to Bournemouth, we've seen them beat City, we've seen them beat Arsenal at their place. So, you know, they just last week beat Forest 5-0. So it's not an easy place to go whatsoever. One of the toughest places to go probably right now. So fair play, getting the win can't be taken for granted. So brilliant for Liverpool. But yeah, unfortunate for Bournemouth.
It is unfortunate because they tested the keeper quite well in this game and probably gave Liverpool as good of a game as they got all season, to be fair. And on the back of, you know, really impressive wins and results that Bournemouth are on right now, you've got to give credit. As much as, you know, I thought the penalty was dubious, you got to give credit to Liverpool showing a gritty performance, getting over the line, getting the 3 points in a very tough place to go. But next up is Everton. The Moyes train keeps on rolling, 4-0 at the hands of Leicester. Both us going for 2-0. And very, very convincing win. Calvert-Lewin out injured. Beto comes in, does the business. Ilman and Dye gets one right at the end. But, I mean, no one, I think, ever was in doubt that Everton weren't going to get the 3 points in this
Yeah,
game.
I mean, they were 2-0 up after 6 minutes.
Yeah.
They were 1-0 up after 10 seconds. And this
quickest
is what...
Everton goal in Premier League history,
and that is also... kind of what we were saying pre-match, is that as much as Leicester did beat Spurs last week, I wasn't overly impressed with them at all. It wasn't like I don't think they won because they were good. I think they kind of just won because Tottenham were terrible. I think more than anything.
Could have been more than 4 as well.
And that's kind of how it proved in this game. Within 6 minutes, it was 2-0 and it was game over. The goals that Everton scored were very direct, obviously going in, literally aiming for Beto in behind time after time, and 2 really good finishes from him, and obviously after Traore gave him the lead, and it was a simple win in the end for Everton. I don't think Leicester really gave them much trouble, and Leicester, I know they got the win, and Ruud might have felt like that could be a turning point, but I think it was back to square one. And what was that now? 7 losses, or it's probably 8 losses in 9 after, because that win last week was their first win in 8 after 7 losses in a row. And so after this defeat, it's 8 losses in 9. And with Everton now getting themselves pretty much clear of the relegation zone, they're now 9 points clear of the relegation zone. I think it really is one out of. It's going to be 2 out of Wolves, Leicester and Ipswich who are going to be battling for that last spot. And Wolves, obviously we'll get into them later, but they had a good result. I think the writing might be on the wall for the relegation sides, and I think Leicester as well. And even the reason why I would still back, I know Ipswich are below them, but I would still back Ipswich over Leicester, because Leicester just seem to be getting battered every week. At least Ipswich are making a bit close, which means maybe some games they can get some points. Leicester just every week, apart from the Spurs game, they're getting absolutely battered. I think Ruud has made things a lot worse, to be honest, since he's come in. And I think the only way they stay up is maybe sacking him and going for maybe get Deitch in for the last few games, because I just can't see Ruud keeping this team up in the way he's got them playing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the manager change from a Steve Cooper to Ruud van Nistelrooy was just the wrong choice. Really was. And you're looking at the league table, right? Leicester on 17, Ipswich on 16, Wolves on 19. So it looks actually quite close on the face of things, but I think when you're looking at the actual teams, and I think there's a big gulf in quality between Wolves and the bottom 3.
I wouldn't be surprised if in a few weeks' time that gap between Wolves and Leicester could
That's
be.
what I'm saying, yeah.
And this relegation fight could be over in a few games' time if Leicester and Ipswich continue to drift.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Everton, well played, 3 wins in a row, and it looks like they're pretty well clear now, that fight.
From one relegation battling team to another in Ipswich and Southampton. It finished 2-1 to Southampton. Sim went for 2-1 to Ipswich. I went for 3-2 to Ipswich. And you know what, Ipswich, they could have got a couple more goals, but this game and this result would have hurt them a lot, because Ipswich had to look at this game and they had to get 3 points if they had any ambitions of staying up, in my opinion. Yes, I know it's still tight, and they're 3 points from Wolves, who did win this weekend, but you got to beat the bottom team. You have to beat the bottom team, the whipping boys of the league, who are on, what were they on, 6 points or 7 points?
6 points.
Before the start of this game. They had to win today. They had to win on the weekend, and they didn't. They let Southampton get the 3 points at their home ground as well, and that's got to be bitterly disappointing to the whole club and their fans.
Major blow in their battle for survival, I think, for Ipswich. And what's gutting as well, ever since they got that win against Chelsea and they got the draw against Brighton, they've just gone on a run of 4 losses in a row and some bad defeats as well, getting battered most weeks. But we said last week they're not going to be judged, with their results against City and Liverpool, but it's these kind of results they get judged on. And the fact they lost at home to Southampton is got to be a massive, massive blow to Ipswich and their belief, especially when you're losing at home as well. They got it back to 1-1, and you're thinking, are they going to go and win this game? And Southampton were the ones to get the late winner, and that'll be absolutely gutting. And I just don't think they have enough when you're losing these kind of games. I know it's only a tight game, and it was 2-1, and a lot of their games, apart from against City and Liverpool, a lot of them have been a bit tighter than maybe some the other relegation candidates. But this game, if it wasn't apparent that it's going to be a massive struggle to kind of stay in this league, I think after this game they'll know that it's probably the odds are going to be against them now, and it's got to be heartbreaking to lose that kind of game. For Southampton, we have been saying their performance is definitely improving under the new manager, albeit the results not so much, but they're still making more of a fight of it maybe than they were under Russell Martin. They are 10 points behind Wolves. Still think it's probably safe to say it's probably still insurmountable, but showing they've still got a bit of fight left in them, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. And when you're looking at Southampton, I've been saying out of those 3 teams, the 3 teams that got promoted last season, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, as much as all 3 of them will be getting poor results, I think Southampton on a performance level have looked the best out of the 3. So, I know we all predicted Ipswich wins just because we thought, Ipswich just had to get over the line against the Southampton team that are fairly open at the back and are losing every week. But it's not a total surprise that Southampton, on performance-based level, have got the result in this game. So, credit to Southampton and the new manager for getting these kind of performances out of them. And maybe they can I wouldn't say put a run together from now to the end of the season, but just keep that performance level going from now to the end of the season, pick up a few results here and there, and then take that form into the Championship next year and just come straight back up.
Yeah, I think that'll be the aim now.
Yeah. And Newcastle, Fulham up next, 2-1 to Fulham at St James's Park. That's back-to-back losses now for Newcastle at St James's Park after such a good run of form. I'm not sure what quite is happening there right now with a big game in midweek against Arsenal, 2-0 up in the Carabao Cup semi-final.
Do they have one eye on it, you reckon?
Maybe. They might have done, but I mean, you could have said they've had one eye on it for the last 3 weeks then, because they're just not getting results. They're not performing well either. And this, you went for 1-1. I went for 3-1 to Newcastle. First half, I thought maybe they just about did enough to edge out a 1-0 kind of lead going into the second half. But in the second half, Fulham completely deserved it. Turned around, got two goals, and they were the much better side.
Yeah, he's a very smart manager, Marco Silva, and he just came up with a way of stifling this Newcastle team. I know Jacob Murphy gave them the lead, but after that moment, Fulham kind of just got themselves back in the game, and Jimenez got the equaliser, and then the substitute Muniz, scored the winner after coming off the bench. And it's a fantastic win for Fulham to go there and get all 3 points. I think they would have taken a draw, but they got it. I think Newcastle just seem a bit lacklustre over the last few weeks. Even against Southampton, they won that 3-1. But again, if you watch the game, it could have turned out very differently if Southampton would have taken some chances, and they were 1-0 down at one point as well. So I don't know what's going on. I think apparently Joe Linton was seen in a knee brace after the game. They've reportedly said that it was just precautionary, and they're going to see if he's fit for midweek. But I mean, if you're in a knee brace, that's never good.
I saw a report this morning that he's a massive doubt for the Arsenal game.
Yeah, so if that's the case, he's obviously a massive player. Maybe he's been playing with an injury. We know that they've been playing with their fully fit squad, their kind of first choice 11 for the last month, but I feel like their squad's not that deep. You after they've got a brilliant midfield three, but after that, it's not fantastic. You look at the front three, you got Gordon there, you got Isaac there, but after that, it's not amazing. So maybe that kind of first choice 11 who was in great form after coming back from injury, maybe they're kind of running on empty a bit at the moment. But maybe as well, maybe they do have one eye on this game, on the cup game, because we know that Newcastle, 50 years without a trophy, this is going to be a massive game for them on Wednesday. And with that 2-0 lead, maybe sometimes you can subconsciously just take your eye off the ball in the league, and maybe that's what's happened. I don't know.
I actually think Arsenal can overturn this in midweek.
Which is mad to think about, because after the game at the Emirates, you're thinking this is over with the form Newcastle on and Arsenal on. You're like, no way they overturn it. But since then, Arsenal
kind of flipped on its head.
Yeah, Arsenal have turned it around in their form, and obviously we'll go into them later. And then Newcastle have lost badly in the last 2 games at St James's. All of a sudden, you're thinking Arsenal got a chance on Wednesday.
I think if Arsenal score early in this game, anything can happen.
Yeah, I think so. So.
Wolves against Aston Villa in a Midlands clash at Molineux. 2-0 to Wolves. Sim went for 3-1 to Villa. I went for 1-1. And I was saying in the preview, Villa always don't turn up after European games. It's been a consistent theme this season. I think it was even last season a bit of a theme for Aston Villa. Were they in Europe last season? No, they weren't even in Europe last season.
They were in conference.
Were they in conference? Maybe it was a theme last season, but I've noticed it all season this year with Aston Villa, so maybe I should have just stuck with my guns and predicted a Wolves win. But yeah, Villa were horrific in this game. Hardly any threat. And Wolves took advantage of it and took the 3 points, and a much-needed 3 points, with pretty much everyone apart from Southampton losing below them.
Yeah, massive win for Wolves, and that will probably, I think, go a long way to, towards safety. I would say Cunha looked back to his best. He was back on side after a few games where maybe he's been frustrated and the manager was complaining about his body language, but now the window's closed. I think he'll refocus, and I think we're going to see the best of Matthias Cunha again. And I thought he was brilliant. His winner, the late goal anyway that he scored to make it 2-0, was fantastic. And I thought Villa just looked all out of sorts. They just were all over the place. Obviously, it was mired by, John Duran was sitting on the bench and he was making funny faces knowing he was on his way to Saudi. And obviously,
did you see that smile? That was a smile of someone that's about to get the biggest payday of his life.
Yeah, honestly, he seemed like he was happy to be on his way. And Villa looked completely out of sorts, and they just didn't have the same energy. And Unai Emery's been complaining a bit in recent weeks about some of their performances and their performance level, and this was definitely probably the worst of the bunch. And obviously, it is a derby, so Wolves maybe were a bit up for it. And it was a massive win because I think this was off the back of 4 or 5 losses on the trot after a decent beginning to his tenure for the manager. So a massive win, and they're now, look, it's only 2 points, but in terms of the performance level that they've also been showing since he's come in, I think they'll feel confident they can steer clear of that relegation fight. And it's literally, they're the only ones who really could be dragged into it at this point. If Wolves are going to steer clear of it, then I think the 3 promoted sides look doomed. If they're going to have more performances like this, it's going to be tough for any of those 3 promoted sides to catch Wolves.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think Wolves will be safe, with some spare time to go in this league campaign. But with Aston Villa, right, they've been a very busy team, haven't they, in this transfer market? Marcus Rashford coming in, Marco Asensio coming in, Disassi coming in, a few other players as well.
Marlon came in,
Daniel Marlon as well. They've been really busy. Do you think that's going to give them maybe the lift they need to maybe push on this second half of the season?
Yes, it's just depth, I think, because clearly they've had this struggle with midweek games and then on the weekend. So just having that extra depth will maybe give them a bit more energy. But I do have my doubts about the signings that they have made. I mean, none of them, as much as on the face of it, you can make arguments for why all of them could be decent signings, but also none of them are in great form. Rashford is in all out of sorts completely. He didn't. I mean, when he was at his presentation, something seemed to be off with him.
Didn't it? I thought that as well.
Like, I don't know what's. I don't know. We know Amorim has been casting him out and saying he needs to do things differently and improve, and maybe there's all sorts of rumours about his personal life. I don't want to get into that, but all I'll say is when I saw some of the pictures, he just something looked a bit off about maybe he hasn't been looking after himself or something. When you look at Asensio, good quality player, don't get me wrong, obviously got bags of ability, but does remind me a bit of a Coutinho, where he'll come up with the odd moment of unbelievable ability but just goes missing way too often, and is a player who will frustrate more than will get you off your seat, I think, a lot of the time. As much as I think his potential, like I was watching comps of him, like people were posting comps, and like they all seemed to be like from 8 years ago, like his goals. I'm like, what's he done in the last few years? Not much. He obviously got his move to PSG, hasn't worked out there, and I don't know if it's like going to be a sign that's going to reinvigorate. Maybe they can get the best out of him. There are some that happens with some players, so it's a sign to be excited about because of the quality he has. But from a rival fan looking in, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be like the most amazing signing. Disassi, I've never been massively impressed with, and I think Daniel Marlon might be the best one, just because I think they needed another winger. I think he's a player who, in terms of his qualities, can add something to that front line, and I think at Dortmund he was decent, so I think he could. And as well, if the role he's going to play maybe as an impact sub, he can be a good role in that. So we've been very busy, but we'll see how their signings, how it impacts the squad.
Yeah, I mean, on Marco Asensio, it does kind of make me think of when they brought Coutinho.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
But I'm looking at his numbers, right? 7 goal assists, 7 goal contributions this season alone in 12 games, which is not a terrible return at all. And last year he got 9 goal contributions in 19 games, both in his 2 seasons at PSG. So, I mean, it's not horrific, is it? It's pretty good.
No, it's not bad. I just think over the last, he's not lived up to his potential, is my point. I think with Asensio, he's never become that player that he threatened to be when he was at Madrid. I don't know how old he is now. Was he 20?
29.
29. So yeah, he's this is the player he is.
But the player he is, we're talking about is good goal contribution to game numbers, and also in his last 2 seasons for Real Madrid, which was 3 years ago, that's when he got his biggest returns in a Real Madrid shirt, 9 goals and 10 goals 2 seasons back.
Yeah, I think, look, as I say, he's a good player and he's got unbelievable ability, but he can also be very frustrating, I think. But look, we'll see how he does for Villa and how he adapts to the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, a shock result at the G-Tech. Brentford 0, Tottenham 2. A really hard-fought, gritty win for Tottenham Hotspur. Sim went for 3-2 to Brentford. I went for 3-1 to Brentford. And, Spurs had to sit deep. They had to be patient. They had to, be on their real defensive duties, which you haven't associated with Spurs, this kind of performance all season. But they got the job done.
Yeah, fantastic. And Brentford really obviously put Spurs under a lot of pressure for this game. I think Tottenham set a record definitely on the weekend, but maybe even the league in terms of the amount of clearances they made. And it just goes to show how under the cosh they were and how they had to keep their concentration. And with the makeshift defence, with a lot of young players in the team again, and another tiring team, they ended up getting the job done. It did take a bit of luck. Obviously, the opening goal was an own goal. and so we just need it from a corner. So we just needed that little bit of luck to get in the lead. But we've taken the lead in a few games recently and haven't been able to hang on to it. So it was really important that Spurs did, and that, we couldn't have needed that win more. With the talk of getting dragged into that kind of relegation battle, all these kind of different things, that win couldn't have come at a better time. So fantastic win for Tottenham. Give me a clean sheet as well away at Brentford, who are the highest scorers at home this season, is no mean feat. So credit to Spurs to get the win, obviously sealed by Salah late on. Brentford will be mildly frustrated because they had some chances and they had a lot of possession, but just couldn't break down a stubborn Spurs on the day.
Brilliant. Great to get our first win since literally that Southampton game at the beginning of December. But you never know, with a big week coming up now, hopefully we can use this. I've said it many a time this season, but hopefully we can use this as a springboard to go and get something at Anfield and get something at Villa Park, where we desperately need in the Cups this season. But let's move on to Manchester United. Crystal Palace did finish 2-0 to Crystal Palace at Old Trafford. Sim went for 0-0. I went for 1-0 to Palace. I get 1 point in this game. And it was the Mateta show once again. He's really banging form, isn't he, Mateta, after a slow start to the season. I think it's 6 goals in his last 5 games in Crystal Palace, in his last 5 Crystal Palace games, and he is absolutely smashing it at the moment. And Manchester United, they just couldn't handle the counter-attacking threat that Crystal Palace had, and it was a well-deserved victory.
Yeah, 3 wins in their last 4 games now for Palace, and they're also one of these teams that seem to have a decent record at Old Trafford, Crystal Palace, in recent years. So fair play to them. I think they went there, they kind of just made sure they were doing their defensive kind of work responsibly. But it was a weird setup for Man United. No Højlund, no Xerxes, playing kind of Mainu in a false 9 with Garnacho and Ahmad beside him, and it looked like at points it might work, but it never really got going properly. And obviously it's the first time they've tried it, but I think that's probably evidence of how much he rates Højlund and Xerxes at the moment, the fact that he's playing Mainu false 9, which is not great, and especially given the fact that Man United haven't signed anyone in the window. They've let go of Rashford and Anthony. Well, they haven't signed any forward players, I should say, because they did get Dorgu through. If I was a Man United fan, I'd be very worried. I mean, obviously, I think they probably have enough points at this point to not to be worried about getting dragged into any sort of relegation battle, but it's kind of like I don't see their league position massively improving with this squad of players, with the way Amorim wants to play, and their performances don't really seem improving. They did get themselves up for some big games like the Liverpool game, the Arsenal FA Cup game, but they just these results also just keep happening when they're losing like at home to Palace, and deservedly so. I thought Palace were well worth 3 points, and Man United just look completely out of sorts at the moment. They just can't seem to kind of get any performance going under Amorim at the moment. Even when they do win, it seems to be unconvincing, and when they lose like these games, it's deservedly so. So yeah, I'm not sure what the rest of the season holds for Man United. Even when you look at the Europa League, do they really have a good chance of winning that? With the squad that they have at their disposal, I don't know. If I was Man United fan, just kind of end the season now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they've left themselves so short in this transfer window. Only 4 attacking options they have, if you don't count Bruno Fernandes, because he's been playing in central midfield. So if you count the 4 players that they have, and none of them really, apart from Ahmad, are really on form or showing any sort of life in this season. So if I'm a Man United fan, I'll be very worried about the season's pretty much over for them. They're still in the FA Cup, I guess.
Yeah,
and they did win the FA Cup last season, so they could do something in the Cups, but in terms of a league campaign, it's over for them, but not too dissimilar to Spurs. But at least maybe we've got a little bit of hope in the Cups.
The only difference is Tottenham are waiting for players to come back, and obviously we've made signings, so there's hope that things can turn. With Man United, I'm not really sure in terms of player availability or anything what is he waiting for. He's got the players he's got available, and that's just how it's going to be, kind of thing.
To be fair though, to Manchester United, they have shown in the odd bid game, that they can turn it on, like in the Arsenal game, like in the Man City game. So maybe there is hope for them in the Cups.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were good performances, but they weren't even in those games, they had to massively ride their luck. At least when Tottenham play well and they win, and most of the time it's like they really deserve to win. Even in those games, even against Liverpool at Anfield, they did get a draw, but again, they could have easily lost that game. Arsenal, they got pummeled, and they just kind of dragged themselves to penalties and got the win. When they beat Man City, they were 1-0 down up until the 90th minute and got 2 stoppage time goals. They weren't even great in that game. So, like, even in the wins, they've kind of rode there. They haven't won convincingly, I would say.
Yeah, that's fair. Arsenal 5, Manchester City 1, and let's say a humbling for Manchester City at the Emirates. Sim went for 2-1 to Arsenal. He gains a point. I went for 2-2. Odegaard scores after, in the opening minute, pretty much, opening 2 minutes, whatever it was. And I thought after that, actually, Man City grew into the game pretty well. They looked like they were creating chances. They were the better team. They got back into the game with Erling Haaland. And then Arsenal get such a lucky goal, like literally the minute after Haaland scored with a massive deflection. I can't remember who it was off, but Thomas Partey scores the goal. And then since then, I mean, Man City just fell apart, didn't they? They fell apart and Arsenal just pummeled them from then until the end of the game. Unbelievable goal from Ethan Nwaneri again, who's just, 17-year-old. What he's doing on a week-to-week basis is just phenomenal for Arsenal.
Every goal seems to be a banger as well, he scores.
I know. He's an incredible football player. He really is. At the age of 17, it's quite unbelievable. You look at, like, Bukayo Saka when he came through at Arsenal, right, at 17. He was unbelievable, but this guy seems to be a level or two above what Saka was at that age.
Yeah, I don't know. Was Saka even playing at 17? I remember he definitely broke in at 18. But maybe
was he
he
not
was
playing at like wing back or something at 17?
Yeah, maybe he was. I can't exactly remember, but he definitely was. Yeah, I mean,
but you know what I kind of liken it to is when Cesc Fabregas broke into the Arsenal team at 17. He like suddenly became the best player in that team at 17. And Ethan Nwaneri is definitely close to that right now.
And it was a massive win for Arsenal because obviously if they dropped points in this game with Liverpool winning against Bournemouth, you think with the Liverpool having that game in hand, you're thinking, is that insurmountable? I still think Arsenal are kind of crossing their fingers and their toes that Everton can get something, because I do think in that game in hand, because I do think if Liverpool win that, if the gap does go to 9 points, as much as Arsenal hold out hope, I think if it does go to 9, I think that hope might diminish a bit. But look, as long as they keep the gap to 6 points, they'll still believe they're in it, and rightly so. And this was also a bit of a statement victory, battering Man City in this kind of style. But it was a weird game because I thought opening exchanges, Arsenal were well on top, and they were forcing City into a number of mistakes. And obviously they got the goal really early on, and then Havertz also should have capitalised on a massive mistake from the keeper, where he was literally presented with the chance right in front of the goal and he missed it. And then after that moment, City did really get back into it, as you said. And when they equalised, they deserved to, because Rayo was making quite a few saves, and City very much had the momentum at that point. And you're thinking they got back to 1-1, deservedly so, and Arsenal have they kind of given up their advantage, but within 30 seconds they got that massive deflection, and then a few minutes later, I think I know Lewis Skelly had a brilliant game. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think Ortega, the keeper, has to be saving that as well. Poor keeping from him, because it's pretty central, that shot, and he kind of gets a big hand to it and allows it to squirm into the goal. I think that's a big mistake. So all of a sudden, I think they kind of get 2 lucky goals, and all of a sudden they got that 2-goal advantage, and it was a weird one because it kind of yes, Arsenal ended up batting them 5-1, but it was one of those games where it seemed as though just like every shot was just going in for Arsenal. And it wasn't like they were just creating chances. Obviously, look, they scored 5 goals. They created a lot of chances, don't get me wrong, but
they scored 5 goals from 2 big chances.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those where everything you shoot flies in. You just have one of those games sometimes, and that was kind of what happened with Arsenal. No, not taking any credit away from them. Brilliant result and a brilliant win, and whenever you will beat even a City side who have had the season they've had, to beat them 5-1 is still a fantastic result, and it's still impressive. But I think 5-1 maybe flattered them a tad, but fair play to them, and it keeps them in the title race. In terms of City, definitely collapsed near the end. I thought John Stones and the keeper had an absolute mare in this one. They were just all over the place. But interesting, the rivalry with this between Gabriel and Haaland, and Lewis Skelly doing the Haaland celebration after he scored. What do you think of all that stuff?
Yeah, it's obviously followed on from the last game, right, where Haaland threw the ball on Gabriel's head, and he went up to Skelly and goes, "Who the hell are you?"
And then stay humble.
And all that, and stay humble to Arteta. So it's followed on from that game, right? In this game, I mean, I kind of look at it both ways. First of all, I like seeing this kind of stuff in games, because it, like, you go back to like the Brighton game a few weeks ago when Ndiaye does the seagull celebration and he gets booked, and I'm saying the game's gone. You want to see this kind of rivalry in games. You want to see this kind of shithousery. This is what makes football what it is, like this kind of stuff. But then on the other hand, I'm looking at it, and Arsenal, when you look at comparing Arsenal to Man City are on the back of 4 league titles. Haaland has got 2 golden boots over the last 2 years. He's the one telling Arsenal to stay humble. And this is the kind of thing that he's talking about. You know, Arsenal trying to shithouse Man City. And Man City I know they're not laughing at the time, but I mean, when they look back on it and the season's all said and done, and probably Man City don't win the Premier League and Arsenal don't win the Premier League, they're probably looking back at this like laughing, because Arsenal are doing all this shithousery to Man City, but what do they have to show for it? Like, This is exactly what Haaland was talking about with Mikel Arteta and the Arsenal team, to stay humble. These guys, they have a win, they have a big win, and credit to them, an unbelievable win, 5-1 at home to Man City. But ultimately, what's it going to mean?
You would have thought they were the ones who went 6 points clear in the title race, by the way they celebrated, but you know, they're still lagging behind, and they could be 9 points behind if they're not careful. So, as much as a great win, I think they do have to stay humble a bit, because they can't really talk to Man City until they have those titles behind them like Man City do. So I also get that, but as well, I also get Arsenal's side of it in the sense that Haaland threw the ball at Gabriel, all those kind of things, and you want to throw it back at them a bit especially after a drubbing like that. So I do think they're within their rights to do so, but I think they need to just not act like they've won the league with that win.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, like I said before, I like seeing this kind of stuff in football. Yeah,
as a neutral, I mean, not that neutral, but as a rival fan, it's great. I love that stuff.
Yeah, I just don't like it when Arsenal are the ones dishing. That's the only problem.
Exactly.
Last but not least was Monday Night Football at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea 2, West Ham 1. Sim went for 3-1. I went for 2-1. Last 5-pointer of the episode. And Sim gets a point. I get 5 points. West Ham go 1-0 up with the return of Jarrod Bowen. He gets his goal. Chelsea seemingly turned it around in the second half. I didn't see much of the game, but I was just following it as the goals were going in. But yeah, I thought Chelsea would just about get over the line in not such a great performance, and that's what I heard it was.
Yeah, I wasn't watching the game either, but from what I've read, it was not a great performance from Chelsea. They were really struggling before, obviously, when Bowen gave West Ham the lead. Bad mistake from Colwell, just paying it blind back to the keeper and allowing Bowen to get for on goal. And Chelsea needed a bit of luck to get back in the game. Obviously, a big deflection, I think, for the first goal falling to Neto, and he gets the equaliser. And then, obviously, a big deflection for the second goal, which ended up being an own goal from Wan-Bissaka through Cole Palmer. So they got the win. Again, not a very convincing performance. And I think their performances have really not been convincing at all for a while. I know they've got a couple of wins but in their last 3 games, and this win does get them back in the top 4, so they'll feel like they're in a good position. They're 2 points clear. They're still only 3 points clear of 7, so it can change very, very quickly. Yeah. But it's still a very good win to keep them inside that top 4. But yeah, performance just wasn't very good from Chelsea, and they kind of needed that luck to get over the line. From West Ham's point of view, they played okay, in the lead. They'll be disappointed they gave it up. Obviously, they got Evan Ferguson coming in. So that will help maybe with the brunt of that. They don't really have 4 players at the moment with injuries, so that will help. Obviously, Graham Potter knows Evan Ferguson very well from his time at Brighton, so I think that should be a good signing. And I think West Ham they'll be all right. I think under Graham Potter, they just need time to readjust. But yeah, from Chelsea, it's been an interesting transfer window. Let go of Disasi, let go of João Felix. There was even talk of Nkunku leaving as well. Obviously, we know Mudrik's going to be facing a ban and whatnot. So it's interesting when you look at it with Chelsea. It's quite interesting when you look at their depth from the start of the season. Everyone was marvelling their attacking options, and to some extent they still are. They do have a lot of attacking options, but all of a sudden, you're getting murmurings of Nkunku being unhappy. You got João Felix who's out the door. You got Mudrik who's not now unavailable. All of a sudden, that depth isn't as good as it once seemed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they're just not playing well at the moment. I don't know what's happened to them, because they were playing really well at the start of the season. The first half of the season, they were like kind of playing really intense, good to watch attacking football. And of late, maybe the last, 6-7 games, they've just been really poor to watch as well.
Yeah, they have. They've been really, really lackluster, it seems. And I don't know what's going on with them, but
can't seem to be getting the best out of Cole Palmer either at the moment.
Yeah, I know. He kind of got an assist for the goal for the winner, but he seems to be also, maybe they've been too reliant on him because he's been carrying them so much with goals, assists. Not even just this season, obviously last season as well. So I just feel like. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the season. As much as obviously there was all working at the beginning of the season because they were rotating all these different things, but it seems as though at the moment all is well with some of the fringe players. They seem to want more game time, and when you've got players like Nkunku and Felix on the bench, and these are star players, it's hard to keep them all happy. And I think maybe that's what's proving to happen at the moment.
Yeah, potentially. Star man, we went for an Everton head-to-head. We both picked Ilman Ndiaye, and obviously I got it in first, so Sim had to pick another player on the spot, and it was Beto that he chose for, who got 2 goals on the day. Ilman Ndiaye got 1, and usually when we go head-to-head in a particular game, neither of them do anything. So yeah, it was good to see 15 points shared between us. Sim gets 10 points, I get 5 points. We were following the game, we were sitting together, and Beto was getting the 2 points. I refused to tell Sim who was scoring the Everton goals. And then Ilman Ndiaye comes up in the last minute. Really good goal, by the way, and gets me a 5-pointer that kind of saved my week, really. So we finish off this week, Sim on 222. I'm on 230.
As you were then, 8 points. It was 8 points before the weekend and 8 points after.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that 5-pointer, the 5-pointer at Chelsea saved me last night, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I would have closed the gap to 3 points there.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't even know until this morning that I got the 5-pointer, or just before we shot this episode. So happy days there. But yeah, a bit of a break for Predict the Prem, as it is FA Cup weekend this week. But we'll see you all just before the following weekend for another episode of Predict the Prem. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.